Joining us right now is Congressman Lee Zeldin from New York. Congressman, good to have you on the program.
It's good to be on with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. What are your takeaways from the debate last night?
It was a great 2 hours. I think that there wasn't a singular winner. I think that for the candidates who are maybe towards the bottom of the top 10, they had the most to gain out of last night. They all scored their points. They're all getting attention. Donald Trump obviously has been dominating the news, but for 2 hours, I mean, you had 10 equals on that stage.
Yeah, you did. You're right. I mean, but what's your take on Donald Trump basically unwilling to make the pledge that he would, support someone else? If, in fact, he were to have an independent campaign, that would be harmful to the Republicans, wouldn't it?
I really don't think he's going to do that. I mean, he said that last night at that moment at the top of the debate, but at the end of the day, he's wherever he ended up falls in the primary votes, we'll see. But I don't think he's going to run a third party.
Who do you think came out best in terms of economics and in terms of foreign policy? I mean, there were a few sort of outsized winners, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think on the economics, hearing from some of the governors who have a record, maybe you learn something new about a Jeb Bush or a Scott Walker or John Kasich that you didn't know beforehand because they're able to talk about their state budgets. Same thing with Chris Christie there was one question where talking about the state of New Jersey's economy today, and he said if you think it's bad, you should have saw how it was 8 years ago before he came into office. So I think for the governors, they had the most to gain on the economics. On the foreign policy, the stage is filled up with some really strong, not just leadership rhetoric, but also a vision and a plan. And coming off of what we have right now with President Obama, it's a much lower standard for this field of 10 to be able to step right over.
Yeah, it sure is. In fact, you have been outspoken about rejecting the president's Iran nuclear deal. We heard during the debate that Senator Chuck Schumer has said he's not going to support the deal. What's your take on this?
I think that he should. It's good that he came out against the deal. There are more congressional Democrats who need to come out against the deal. And it's one thing to be opposed to it, and it's another to start advocating with colleagues. This is a bad deal for America, and we need those leaders to actually speak up, not just say they're coming out against it, but spend the next month or so talking to colleagues as well.
Do you think with Schumer basically pushing back on this that there is a chance that Congress can overturn this?
I think worst case scenario, we come really close to being able to override a presidential veto. There is no way to actually override a presidential veto without more congressional Democrats coming out against it. So it's good news every time you see a House Democrat or a Senate Democrat come out in opposition. We're getting a little bit closer. Worst case scenario, we'll get close. We need more people to step up and do what's best for national security over party loyalty. Well,
it's interesting, Joe and Jack, jump in here, because last night I thought the Iran story and the nuclear deal would come up more. I didn't hear a lot of substance from a handful of them. What was your take in terms of how the candidates addressed the Iran deal?
Well, the one thing that struck me was when Scott Walker tried to equate the Iran deal with fighting ISIS. And I don't know what the heck he was trying to say. ISIS, of course, is Sunni. Iran is Shia. There's no real connection there. I agree with you that I didn't really hear much there. But, it's very complicated. I mean, I think this was the introduction to these guys. We're trying to get their overall take. The moment that struck me the most, two moments really, was Chris Christie twice pointing out something that politicians hate to point out, which is that anytime you make a choice, there are consequences. And he touched the third rail, and he said, look, Social Security's in trouble. I'm going to make painful choices to fix it, which was amazing to me that he came out and said that.
It was honesty.
And then the same thing when it came to national security. He said to Rand Paul, you can't monitor phone calls only of terrorists. That's the problem. Now, some Americans say, look, I don't want that. I do not want the government monitoring my phone calls. But he laid out the choice for you and said clearly where he stood. And I think that that's really going to help him going forward.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think that people are thirsty for leadership. They want to be boldly led. They don't want someone to come across as cautious and scripted. And I think that, that passion came out all across the stage last night.
What did you think of Governor John Kasich? He barely made the debate, but a lot of people who were reacting, especially on Twitter and Facebook, found him to be maybe more reasonable, so to speak, towards the center, whatever that means right now.
I think he came out of it. I agree. I think.
What did you think of his performance?
I think that, specifically when he was talking about gay rights, it's a difficult issue to navigate in a Republican primary, especially when, someone like him has a position against same-sex marriage, yet he gave an answer that came across as very tolerant. And even though it was a Republican primary audience, he got thunderous applause. It was
really
a home
did.
field advantage.
Yeah.
He was running
Yes.
for the national election. A lot of these guys, Ted Cruz was running for the nomination. Kasich
Yeah.
was one of the people who
That's a good
said,
point.
here's how I stand nationally. I really like that a lot.
Yeah,
He
I
came
like that a
across
lot
as very
too.
human.
Before you go, real quick on the Iran deal, now that we know Schumer will vote against it, who's the next sort of important vote that you look to see whether or not there's an opportunity to reverse this, or at least challenge it?
I think the key is finding out whether or not Senator Schumer is going to start whipping votes amongst colleagues, because I mean the rest of the undecided field right now are pretty much all practically equals of available votes to come out against it, but they need to be led by someone who's actually rallying the troops. It's not, it's not just Republicans or people who are not part of the base for these Senate Democrats, but hearing from their own. Senator Schumer is the heir apparent, so he's the most important voice there.
All right, Congressman, good to have you on the show today.
Good to be on.
Thank you so much, Congressman Lee Zeldin, joining us.